You are not your job title. Your strengths and your superpowers are not your role, not your functional area. So that's for sure.
Hey, Creating Maven. I'm Joy Spencer, your reframe specialist, with one important message. Your real work, it's not your job or your career. Your real work is what you create. And what you create is what sets you apart and makes you incomparable. It's your legacy. I'm here to show you a whole new way of working so you can create with your gifts, make a unique contribution, and finally get paid to be yourself. This is Reframe to Create.
Think about the last time someone asked you, hey, what's your passion? Did you have an answer? Or did you just stare back at them blankly and hear crickets? And hey, even if you did have an answer, do you know exactly how to go about pursuing your passion using your superpowers? I mean, what does that mean or even look like? A razor-sharp clarity on how to answer this question for yourself and a clear roadmap of how to pursue it is what my guest, Betsy Jordyn, is going to give you in this episode. I met Betsy through the Speaking Your Brand community of fellow women entrepreneurs and thought leaders. You've heard me talk about Speaking Your Brand before. I've even had the founder and podcast host Carol Cox come on in episode 54 to talk about becoming better at navigating transitions, and Diane Diaz, who is Speaking Your Brand's lead speaking coach, who stopped by in episode 64 to talk about the why and how of building a powerful personal brand. Betsy Jordyn, who joins us today, piqued my interest as a possible guest because I was curious about what she could teach us through her very interesting journey from organizational development consultant at Walt Disney Company to entrepreneur and owner of her own business. She gave me a total reframe on the word passion that you're going to love, as well as insight into how you can learn what your unique creative strength style is in the form of your superpower. Today, Betsy Jordyn is a brand positioning strategist. She helps consulting and coaching business owners to clarify their brand positioning and messaging. She helps them to create a website presence that positions them to be sought after experts, to help them to land their clients, and to take their place as thought leaders and influencers in their niche. Her mission is to help consultants and coaches to monetize their best at strengths and their authentic passions to make a bigger difference in the world. She's also the host of the Enough Already podcast. And even if you're not a coach or a consultant, Betsy is about to drop so many nuggets that will get you straight on your why, on your what, and on your how. So make sure you have a notebook so that you don't miss anything. I didn't waste any time in getting to the good stuff. When you hear the phrase getting paid to be you, what comes up for you?
Getting paid to be you really involved a lot with you have to figure out who you are first before you can get paid to be you. You have to be able to answer the question, who am I? What's my purpose? And what am I really great at? That you have to figure out first. So nobody's going to pay you for you to be you until you figure out who you are. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
And what's been your experience with that journey?
Well, it depends on which decade, of my life. Like now in my 50s, I would tell you I have a very different perspective on what it means to be you and understand that versus what I would have thought in my 40s or in my 30s. I think that in my 50s, I would say you can't really be you until you let go of everything that's not you. And a lot of times when you're on the upswing of your career, you take on all kinds of roles, expectations, and a lot of shoulds of like, this is how I'm supposed to operate. And I think somewhere like in midlife, you go through a period of time where it's like you let go of like that false self, like that false perspective, so that the true self emerges. But there are seeds that you could look at in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s. So it really depends on your career stage. But I think like in your 20s, the most important thing is just really go with like what your interest is, no matter what it is, whatever you think. Like a million years ago, I did this like teaching kind of thing for my daughter's 5th grade class. And so they talk about like bring your parent to work to talk about what they do. So I was telling the kids, like, well, what I do is I help grownups figure out what they want to be when they grow up. And the kids were all horrified. They're like, what do you mean by that? They don't know. I'm like, well, a lot of them don't know. And so I did this little exercise with the kids, like, okay, what are you into? What are you having a lot of fun with? Like, what are your hobbies, or what are your interests? What are you great at? And these kids could not, they just were clamoring on top of one another. Like they're like all raising their hand, like, oh, me, I love this, I love this, I love this. And then I gave like a different kind of talk a few days later with a bunch of adults, and they're all sitting there like, like, do you have a personality assessment you can give? So there's some of it is like, we know who we are when we're really little. We know what we're interested in. We know our yearnings and all of that. Then somewhere on our climb to success, we forget about all of that. And then we have to find a way to let go of all of those things because, we get golden handcuffed to them. And that's the process. That's, to me, is like the big midlife process. I don't know if I answered that question properly.
Yeah, no, well, it's like coming full circle, right? So the journey to figuring out who you are oftentimes is returning to those early inclinations, those early interests that were always there, and get lost in the sauce and get lost on the journey. So it's like essentially returning to yourself. What did that look like for you?
It took a long time for me to figure out, like, there's 2 parts of my career that were going on at the same time. So I was professionally pursuing an organization development consulting kind of role. So that's what I was doing. That's what I was going to grad school with. There was a lot of things that I loved about organization development, and I was really good at it. So this was like my sweet spot, and I got a lot of recognition. So I kept on with that path. And there's aspects that, really do reflect a lot of my strengths. But what's interesting is like I had this other side of me all along. Like I've always been interested in gifts and strengths and personality assessments. And I was one of my big projects when I first got to Disney was on the Animal Kingdom rebranding. And it's like, I love branding because it's so much about identity, and being able to express your identity in more of an authentic way and what the value is that you create. But I kind of like ignored all of this. And then I created this whole business on the consulting side. And then it took me a long time, through my whole midlife journey to realize like, no, this other thing has value. And this is what I should really be focused on. But it took a lot of letting go, because everybody's like, well, if you can stand up in front of a group of executives, why would you ever give that up? Like it did not make sense to anybody. You can land 6-figure contracts with these companies. Why in the world would you give that up to do what I do now, which is about the branding and identity and helping people find the words? Like I've always been a word girl. I've always been a reader. I've always been a writer. I've always been that person. And then the irony all these years later. So you and I were talking separately about like, what about the podcast do I like about the interviews so much? I was interviewing one of my past clients about why do executives hire consultants and coaches? I thought it would be super beneficial. And he started reflecting back, like why he worked with me all those years. And he's like, well, because you have this ability to take all the million ideas in my head and sort and organize it and put it into words. I'm like, oh my gosh. So what made me a successful consultant is what I do now. Nobody cares about my OD knowledge. Nobody cares that I know how to do strategy. It's just that I know how to organize a whole bunch of ideas and get them into some sort of packaging. That's what they liked. That's what made me a great consultant. That's what drives me now and what I do. But it took a long time.
Yeah, no, what I'm hearing is sort of like that a lot of what really makes us stand out and unique can be buried in the skills that we pick up in work and from jobs and in spaces where we're being patted on the back for what we do. We also do those things really well, right? So what you're saying sort of like makes me think about the Marcus Buckingham, the Strength Finder definition of strengths, which is that strengths are the things that give you energy, the things that you want to do over and over and over again. They're not necessarily the things that you're good at or competent at. And that's such a subtle distinction that a lot of people get lost in, because you could go to work and you make a lot of money and you get accolades and you're doing really well in a particular area. And you can think that, well, this is it. This is me. This is what I should continue doing and being about. And you can lose sight of your real strength, the real things that really make you unique, and that you're not necessarily getting accolades for them on first glance, or maybe they're the things that actually support the way that you do everything else. But it's such a fine line, and it's so subtle. And I can understand that subtlety can trip us up and trip a lot of, trip me up, trip you up. And I think it did, because I saw that you always say that you when you did your first business, you created the wrong business. And when I saw that, I was like, wait, how do you do that? How does someone with all your skills, expertise, and all that you bring to the table, how do you create the wrong business? And what does it look like to figure that out and then create the right one? Because I think those who are thinking about creating and doing something with their gifts might not be aware that that's something to be mindful of, that they might launch out or be focused on doing something that's not the right thing. And how do we know the difference of that? Steer us right in this in this, Betsy. Help us out.
Okay, so you just totally gave me a big aha. And I just want to go back to something that you just said. And this is like the big insight. Like, I just have the hugest aha just listening to you mirror back what I just said. But I think the issue is that not that we get caught in a trap around like, this is the strengths that are getting accolades and this is what's not. I think our strengths are always getting accolades. Our strengths are because people are going to tell you like, oh, you did so great with that. And you're just like, that's nothing. Those are those indicators that you're in your zone of genius. But where we really get stuck is we get confused between our strengths and our specific business line or our formal expertise. And we think our strength is like, for me, it was like, I'm an organization development person. So I'm an expert in strategy and org design. And I think that those are my strengths. Or somebody might be in operations and it's like, well, I'm an ops person, I'm a salesperson, I'm a finance person, I'm whatever that is. And like, so we get too associated with the job title, our functional area of expertise, when people are actually always acknowledging and bringing us in because of the strengths that we're bringing. And we don't notice those. And that's where I got stuck, is my formal expertise that I got as an organization development person, as with my master's and all of that and my titles. And I had a sexy title, being an internal organization development consultant for Walt Disney World, is a sexy title. So we get stuck behind the title rather than what is it that I want to offer. So asking about the strengths, like there's a variety of different strengths that we all might be bringing to the table. People are recognizing them. So it's like, it's just being clear. Like I have a model that I use in like helping people identify their superpowers. And I think I just typed myself wrong. I could tell you like what my model is and how I do that. And maybe that will help. I don't know.
Yeah, you're making me curious. I'm sure folks want to know how do I avoid this trap? Like if someone like you fell into it, how do I avoid this and sort of move in the direction that I want to go right from the beginning?
Well, your strengths and your passions are not your job title, your functional area. That's as an organization has defined those boxes for you. So you have to see yourself outside of the formal role that you have and really think about like, what are your passions and what are your strengths? So to me, your passion, I'll talk about passion, then I'll talk about strengths. Passion isn't what you love, it's what you hate. Like the word-
hold up. You have to say that again, slowly.
Okay.
That was a mic drop. Say that again.
Passion isn't what you love, it's what you hate. So the root word of passion comes from passion of the Christ, which is like suffering. And it's like, it's where you see like the divinity not touching in the world, like where it's absent, like where things are broken. It's the stuff that pisses us off, the stuff that drives us crazy, like that there's sometimes like where your passion is, it's like, I've got to do something. It's like that Popeye moment, where Popeye, gets to the, he gets to the edge where somebody does something to olive oil and is like, that's all I can't stand no more. It's like having those moments that you see in the organization is like, somebody's got to do something about it. I got to do something, or something's missing in the marketplace. Like that's the source of entrepreneurship. Creativity isn't about like, let's say like I love my Stanley Cup, and if I told you all the things I love about my Stanley Cup, that there wouldn't be anything that would create innovation. But if I told you, like, it drives me crazy because, like if I spill it because there's no real lid for my whole thing, like maybe if this would flip down or, it's so big that it's just, if I start telling you the stuff I don't like, well, now I see all the ways that I could actually improve it. So people are trying so hard to be like, I need to be positive. Need to see what's right. I need to have the power of positive psychology and positive organizational stuff. That's not going to create the change. Like when you think about like in the world, like where do we see things that are broken? Like that's one of the big benefits, I think, since 2020 is like we see that there's so many broken systems. Like the systems are so screwy in every part of the world, like organizational systems, like the criminal justice, like you could just go on. And it's like, it's just really letting your heart break for that stuff. Like that's what you should be focusing on. So in your business, like you help entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs, an entrepreneur and entrepreneur is the same thing. Like, where do I see that this is all screwed up and somebody should do something? Well, that somebody's supposed to be you. That's what you should be doing.
Right. What I should be doing. Yeah. I love it. No, I love it. Passion is what you hate. I love that. You've given me the reframe. It's not what you love. Passion is not what you love. It's what you hate. And the genesis or the space for creativity and innovation to sort of surface is in the gap, is where we see the problems and where we sort of like, I hate that the world is this way. I hate that this is broken. So looking to those places in our world is pointing us in the direction of what our passion is. That pretty much the stuff that gets us on our soapbox. Love it. Absolutely love it. So that's our passion. Our passion is the thing that's going to get us on the soapbox.
And so you ask the question like, well, why did I start the wrong business? It's like, well, some of it is I started my business. I became a single parent. And it's like, well, I've got to do what's logical. Like when I left Disney, I didn't immediately start my own business. I went to seminary and I was very interested in the intersection between psychology, theology, and business. But it's like, but then I got divorced. I'm like, well, I got to be practical. So it's like, I got to giddy up and go, got to do this. And I suppressed all of that stuff. And then I got so much external feedback and pressure. Like, even when I tried to be like more feminine on my website, I got so much crap. Like I hired a speaking coach back then. And she was just like, why do you have heels on? Like I had open toe shoes and I was, I look like me. And she's like, oh, Betsy, you look like a party girl. She's British. She's like, you look like a party girl. She's like, now I'm talking to you and you can stand up with a group of executives. Like if I hear one more time how I could stand up in front of a group of executives, I want to like harm myself because it drives me crazy. It's like, yes, it's a unique skill set that I could corral these group of executives, but my heart doesn't break because executives are not on the same page. My heart breaks when people are not connected with who they are, that they're like, like helping younger versions of myself, like that there's a huge gap. Like there's a million business mentors out there, million business coaches. You could just like can't shake a stick at we're everywhere. But nobody really takes the situation that I was in where it's like, take a beat, you're mid-career, that there's a chance that there's this formal expertise you created by doing your job. But then there's this informal expertise that you are creating along the way. Like one of my clients was an IT leader, but she wound up mentoring. She's Latina. She became a CIO. Not a lot of people can do that. And she was able to get to the top. And what she did is she always mentored women who are of diverse backgrounds and helping them get to the C-suite. And like, that's her passion area, because it's like, wow, that sucks that there's not enough of us at the top. So I would say, number one is an action item. Entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs, as an entrepreneur, as I was, is look around your organization and say, what is just like, what in the world? Like, what is going on here? Somebody should do something. That's you. And when you're an entrepreneur, look in the marketplace. Where's the undermet need or the unmet need? Either one, that's where you're supposed to be. And be really cognizant of the people that are around you. People are coming to you to help all the time. That's the other thing that helped me get to the right business is when, after I started the wrong one and I hit like, sort of like, what did I do? I did start getting much more curious when people started calling me up for help. I'd ask more questions instead of making assumptions. Like, obviously you want to know about my consulting expertise. Obviously you want to know how I can corral a group of executives, but I listened. And what they would tell me all the time, what I started noticing thematically, every single person who called me was at a career crossroads of some kind. And I believe that a career crossroads is ultimately about the difference between, it's like, I'm going to go down one path around who I think I should be and what everybody thinks I should be versus this path of what I want to be. And so I started listening when people started coming to me. And then I started asking questions. Like I was on this podcast that I got a lot of traction from. And I just assumed like, oh, everybody wants to know how I grew my business from 0 to 300,000 in the first 18 months. And they're like, no, I really like what you said about strengths. I'm like, well, tell me more. What did you like about what I said about strengths? They're like, well, I want to use my strengths in my business. I really want to do this. And it's like, oh, wow, you're coming to me for the very things that I'm passionate about. All of this stuff is going to wind up being congruent if you just get really patient and listening and curious, and you stop with the expectations of what you think you're supposed to be, what's rewarded. And I would just say, well, bottom line, if you're going to walk away from anything, you are not your job title. Your strengths and your superpowers are not your role, not your functional area. So that's for sure. Point one. Point two is go where you're supposed to serve and help. And the difference you're supposed to make is where your passion leads you, which is the stuff that's driving you insane. And then how you're supposed to make a difference. I'll tell you in a second about the strengths. I'll let you kind of weigh in here.
Well, no, but definitely roll into that, because so we're clear, right, on what our passion is. That's where we see the world is broken, what we need to move towards. That's what we're supposed to do. How are we supposed to move into service with our strengths? Tell us what our strengths are.
So picture this. So I look at it as there's 4 primary archetypes of what the superpowers are for people in the world of work. All work begins with the visionaries. So visionaries is the first bucket. And so these are the people who envision a possibility. So these are the idealists. They're the ones who see something that other people don't. They're the ones who see into the future or see into the possibilities. You have a lot of visionary in you because of your storytelling gifts. Like you can paint pictures of invisible stuff. A lot of people in branding and marketing, they're all in the visionary bucket. The product development people, they're the ones who kind of see it and create it out of nothing. But that's only one way of creativity. People assume this is the creatives, and it's not necessarily the creatives. There's creatives in every bucket because people are creative in multiple different ways. But you have this particular group where they start off and they envision something. They're the visionaries. They create something from nothing. Then once the idea has created some sort of form of some kind, then it gets kicked over to the sages. So the sages are the knowledgeable experts who are the strategists who take that idea and turn it into some sort of system strategy or plan to make it come into more structure, more form. You can see architects in this particular area. You can see finance people are here, IT people are here, but it's these are the, engineering people are here, just even the scholars, all of them are in this particular bucket. And then once you get that part, once the idea now has structure, strategy, and all of that in place, then it moves into the caretakers. And the caretakers are the ones who enroll and develop and equip people in order to implement whatever this plan is. So the caretakers are the trainers, the mentors, the people in HR. You might see that in this particular group, but they're the developers, the coaches and all of that. And then once that happens, then it kicks over into the warriors. And the warriors are the ones who just get stuff done. There's a lot of them are sales, operations kind of people, but they're the change agents. They're the ones who make stuff happen. They're the ones who are going to take this thing all the way home. So you can figure out what you want to do, but then you got to kind of figure out where your zone is. I thought because I was an OD consultant, it's I'm a sage. I do have a lot of sage in me, but I'm a visionary. Give me a blank piece of paper and I'm the happiest person in the world, because when somebody get other people, they need a straw person to react to. I don't like the straw person. It confuses me. It's don't know. I want to look at the blank piece of paper. I want to see into possibilities. I'm more of a shapeshifter. You're a storyteller. I'm a shapeshifter. Or actually, you're a little shapeshifter too because of the reframe thing. Mm-hmm. So you're probably a shapeshifter and a storyteller, but it's kind of we're in the idea bucket. So the way we might serve in an organization or outside of an organization is you got something new that you got to get off the ground, come to us. We're the ones who are going to bring it off the ground. That's our creative expression. But the sages are just as creative. When I was at Disney, we did this initiative that completely reframed how the tickets were. So they used to do tickets where it's you can get a day ticket, a 3-day ticket, or what have you. Then they redid the entire ticketing strategy. It was very interesting. There was a whole pricing thing that went with it. Somebody thought of like, hey, there's probably some way to do this. But then there's all of these really interesting people who put all the analytics and the strategies to make this thing come to reality. Super interesting. Then all the systems had to change. There's all these other things. You needed a bunch of people, and so that's a way to create. You also create by developing other people, building the teams, leading the teams, and all that kind of stuff. And it's also creative in terms of like, if you've ever been to Disney and you see the operations team working, just their ability to do the arranging of like, this goes to this to go to this and make this efficient is creative in itself. So where you're supposed to serve is based on like, well, what would be your natural inclination? If somebody put if you were at a meeting and they say, okay, here's something to solve, and you're the person that's like, we could think about it this way. We could think about this way. Then you should be the one at the front end, but you shouldn't be at the back end.
Right. You're just going to keep coming up with new ideas when it's time to get stuff done.
Yeah.
When you're in the warrior stage.
Yeah.
What did you just describe? This visionary, was it visionary, sage, caretaker, and warrior? What is that? Was that a strength kind of model? I don't think I've ever heard this. What was this?
That is a model that you could actually learn more about it on my website. So if you go to my website at www.betsyjordyn.com, you can go to /downloads and you'll find a couple quizzes there, or it's actually all over my website now, just like discover your consulting or coaching superpower.
What I like about it, and thank you for sharing that. What I like about it is that it's not just about you as an individual, but you sort of center it as you in the context of a group or even as a community, like, and understanding what your role is as part of something that's bigger than just you, right? So I know I'm encouraging people to create with their gifts, and it can feel like a very solo exercise and something that you're just doing for your own self-actualization out there. But what you're describing is it as something as even the way that you create and the unique way in which you show up is a gift to the world, and is a way of doing it with others and in community with others, sort of like how you can collaborate best. And with that knowledge, you can also just sort of say, hey, I'm not the person for this. You want to ask this other person, or, I'm right for this other particular part or aspect of it. So that was really, really an insightful and powerful way to look at your strengths. And you gave us more than just strengths. You gave us our creating strengths, like the unique way in which we create.
I just want to go back to something you just said. I was like, while you were talking, I was like pulling out my notes on my phone because I literally just journaled about this morning about that. So can I just like read what I wrote?
Yes.
So this is, I don't know, maybe it was in time for this one. I'm like, you cannot own who you are until you let go of who you are not. Owning your gifts is owning your true self and the part of you that reflects an aspect of the divine to the world. Letting people exploit your gifts for their own gain is a cosmic tragedy. And there has to be a balance between giving and receiving. With clients, like if you're working externally, there has to be a financial energy exchange. But when you're talking about healing the world or making a difference in any way, it's about playing your part with others and not doing it on your own, and assuming too much that is outside of your zone of genius as you rob people of their role. And so I have to play my role, but I can't like fake it and pretend to play your role. Like, like you're different than I am and everybody else is listening. Like we all have our place. And so like the whole idea here is like own your space, but then partner together. That's where we're going to create more value. So like in my business, like I partner with Carol Cox a lot. Like we both kind of talk about thought leadership and branding, but we do it in different ways, and she has a different kind of audience. And it's like, there's room for all of us at the table. And so if you're an entrepreneur, like the whole idea is like own your space, but then find a bunch of other people who have their specific gifts, who care about the same thing that you care about, and then proactively advocate for that. That's like a key phrase I would use for people who are internal is conceive something with other people, and then proactively advocate it to the right person who could sign off on it, but be a proactive advocate. Like this is what's in your best interest. Similarly, if you're an external person, it's like, you don't have to be everything to everybody. You're not going to be, but you could really play your role really, really well, and then find your collaborators.
I love that. I love that we've moved into this conversation around collaboration, because that was Collaboration is sort of where my consulting journey began. I started out by creating a workshop on how to be a better collaborator. And sort of I sort of backed into, what do collaborations do? What do collaborations give to us? And it was sort of like, what do people do when they come together? They create. And so it's sort of like those two, the work, what I do around creating and collaborate actually came out of the work of collaboration and seeing what a source of innovation and creativity that really is when an individual can do what you're saying, come in, be in their own lane, bring their gifts, bring everything that they have to the table that's powerful, but also leave room and space for others and for there to be sort of like a dance that's happening and the creating that happens there and the innovation that happens. And so I thank you for bringing that back up, because I think that that's something that I wouldn't say I've lost it, but I've not emphasized in this podcast. I've not emphasized collaborating with others when you're creating in this podcast. It's been very much focused on the creating maven as an individual and them going off and doing their own thing. So thank you so much for bringing that concept and that idea back and reminding me of that. And I'm going to do my level best to make sure that I continue to emphasize that going forward, because it's not just about us. It's not just a solo exercise. It's not just about what we're doing and who we're serving as individuals, but who we are in community and who we want and the communities that we want to serve. And it's better when more people are doing that and coming together. So thanks so much for that.
Yeah, I think that the collaboration it's not just like even in the collaboration for like, I want to have more fun. Like people might think, oh, I need to collaborate. I need to have this. It's really this more humble recognition. It's like, you're better than I am at this. And I want to surround myself with experts. I want to surround myself. Like you're an amazing storyteller. Like when I saw you, you tell stories, it's like, there's no one like you. You're just like one of the best out there. I'm not going to be amazing at that. I can get slightly better, I can learn some skills from you to get slightly better so that I could do what I need to do. But why do I want to replicate this unique space that you have? So if I have clients who want to really knock it out of the ballpark with storytelling, I'm going to refer them to you. If I have somebody else who wants to become a keynote speaker, I'm going to refer them to Carol. But if there's somebody who wants to really get clear on who they are, what the value is, and how they stand out in the marketplace, I hope that they're going to refer them to me, because that is my sweet spot.
I love it. This is good stuff. I think we're laying a good roadmap for folks when they're thinking about what they want to create, that they are thinking about their passion as you defined it as the guide for the direction that they should go in. So it's like, it's the thing that's, that's bothering you, where you see the gap, the stuff that's got you on the soapbox. And sometimes that's harder, especially at first when you're thinking, oh, well, will I be different? Am I going to stand out? Or nobody else is doing this, or nobody else sees this. Everyone else is seeing it this other way. And sometimes it's going to require courage to say, well, I'm the only one who sees it this way for a reason. And I need to continue to move into this and build whatever it is that I need to build here. I don't need to be looking at everyone else and saying, well, nobody else is saying, and nobody else notices this, or everyone else says that I'm really good at this other thing. But that thing doesn't, I guess, piss me off or get me worked up or keep me up at night. So, I shouldn't bother with that. But you've given us some things to really think about.
I still would make sure that we separate the thing out from like what drives me crazy and what I'm really good at.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're still not the same, like caring about something in the world. Like that's going to be like what gets you into energy. Like this is where I look at like the warrior anger is like really good, because we are so afraid of anger, but rather than like looking at anger, like anger has that thing of like, you put your foot down and it's like, that's all I can't, like no more, like that's the good transformational energy that'll help you, get the courage to kind of go after what you need to go after. Or I don't know if you're familiar with Audre Lorde, the poet, and she says, when I dare to be powerful, when I use my strengths in service of my vision, it matters less and less whether I'm afraid. Like when somebody's like so quickly like, oh, there's so many other people and they have all of that, then I would probably say you're not quite in your zone of passion quite yet. You haven't tapped into it, because what's going to move you is nobody's talking about this enough. Nobody's done anything. If this has been a solved problem and you just want to be another one of 100 people to solve the problem, when people start questioning themselves, like I work with consultants and coaches, so they immediately start off like, oh, like there's so many consultants and coaches out there, like whatever it is. I'm like, okay, you got the spotlight way too much on yourself. We need to get it onto who you're going to serve, and then once you see that, then you'll know, like there's a lot of people who might be a dating coach. Like one of my clients is a dating coach. It's like there might be a ton of dating coaches out there, but then when we narrowed it down, she's like, well, I really want to help women who've achieved a lot of success in their careers, but just not in love. Well, now we're talking about something very different. That's a problem that she's like, oh, well, I got to solve that. Or another one of my clients is a teacher, mental health advocate and coach. I just moved from Florida. Florida is a very difficult place for teachers right now, and she's in Florida. And for her, it was like, somebody's got to do something. Like, their teachers are not staying, teacher retention's a huge problem. That's what gets her over the hump. Like, then how is she going to use her skills? Well, she's a caretaker. So obviously what she's going to do with her skills, she's going to teach workshops, she's going to do one-on-one coaching, she's going to go do group coaching, and she's going to do transformational retreats. That's how she's going to enact it. Somebody else who might be a warrior might be focused on, we need to do something about the book bans. We need to do something about the curriculum challenges that they're having where they're taking out diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we need to do something else like that, versus a visionary might think about it differently. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Like that's
No, I like that. I like that. And thank you for clarifying that. So something that you said that stood out to me about what we should watch out for is if you're saying, oh, there are a lot of people in this space that you might not have quite gotten there, quite to your thing. Because when you are about your thing, you really are not even paying attention to that. You're not seeing yourself anymore. You're seeing the thing that you're passionate about. And not just that, you're seeing the people who are hurting or missing out on what it is that you are so convinced that they need. That's all your focus. You're all about service and about helping the people who you are here to help. So the focus moves from you to them, to those who you're here to serve. Yeah. So thank you so much it's about the passion, the soapbox, and it's about, what you see that's wrong. And then specifically the people who you're going to serve, and then how you're going to do it will be different. And so it'll depend on your strengths, your unique way of creating, whether you're one of those 4 archetypes that you described. And that's going to determine where you are in the process of serving those people, but then also give you clues as to who to collaborate with to really serve that community more and better and do your work better. So you've got the passion, you've got the clarity on your passion, you've got clarity on who you're serving, and you've got clarity on how you're going to serve them with your strengths and how you're going to do that in community and collaboration with others.
Awesome framing up of what I just said. That's amazing. Better than I could have said it.
I'm a synthesizer. I can say that word. Can I say that word?
You sure can.
What else? What have I not asked you that you want to share, or what do you want to leave us with?
So I would say that there's one other point to kind of bring it all home is nobody's going to invite you to do the things that you want to do. If you're going to be an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, that you're going to have to take charge of how people perceive you and understand you to be and the value that you want to create. So I'll give you a story from when I first became an organization development consultant. I just completed my graduate school degree. I had the formal job as an organization development consultant for my nonprofit that I was working for at the time. So I thought yay, I'm super fortuitous because my company was announcing this big reorganization. I'm like, wow, I get to really take all the stuff that I learned in grad school and I could apply this. And then they announced what was going on with that project team. So not only was I not the consultant, they hired an external consultant and it wasn't me. I was not the consultant and they didn't even include me on the project team. I was nowhere in it. I was not even on the radar. And I'm like, I have the formal title here. Like, I would be the obvious go-to person. I'm the change management person here. And good thing though, my professor was a mentor still to me after I graduated. And I called him up and I'm like, Rick, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm devastated. I'm not sure. And he told me this one piece of information that I think completely transformed my entire career and that led to my success even at Disney and then as a business owner. And he said, nobody's going to use your expertise the way that you want it. You're going to have to shape thinking on who you are and what you want to do. So he's like, this is what you need to do. You need to go to that executive in charge of this particular initiative and just offer your availability. Tell them, that you're just out of grad school. You'd love to learn, you'll do anything that you could help, just go in humble like an intern. And I did that. And then so there's like, okay, cool. So Betsy could be a part of just, a fly on the wall, in these sessions. And then he said, make yourself indispensable to the external consultant. So I went and made myself indispensable. When he was not there, I would facilitate meetings. And then eventually he kept delegating more and more and more, training me more and more and more. By the time the project was almost over, he was gone. I was leading the whole thing. And that's how I got my start as a consultant. And then when I left that nonprofit and I went to Disney, I had that perspective. Like, it's up to me to break into these client systems. It's up to me to shape thinking. It's not like an OD consultant actually has a formal I'm not essential to the operations running. I'm only there when they're trying to improve things, but I had to make myself known for what I want to do. So I had to develop those relationships. I had to proactively advocate. So then when I went and started my own business, I never assumed that the market's just going to come to me the way that I want them to. I have to shape thinking. You have to take control. So even as I went from a consulting business owner to what I do now, I had to shape thinking in the marketplace. And there was a couple of years that people were making fun of me, like, what's Betsy's brand du jour? Like, she keeps changing, and it's like, well, that's fine, but I'm carving out my place. Nobody's going to come to you. I think that's when you talk about reframe to create, like when you think about like what you're trying to do, it's like you're going to create something. Your container might be different. Your something might be a business idea. It might be an initiative. It might be a mentoring experience. It might be a project. It might be a cause that you're, like something else. Like, there's a million things, but nobody is going to invite you to do the things that you want to do because they're not going to conceive it. You have to shape the thinking. It is up to you. So the steps, obviously, I would say is step one is don't worry about anger. Foster the anger. Think about what bugs you, what drives you crazy. Get into your passion area. Really pay attention to your strengths, and you'll know your strengths because people are going to come to you for your strengths. So you pay attention. Anytime somebody compliments you and they say, oh my gosh, you did amazing at that. And when you're tempted to shrug it off and say, that's nothing, that's your zone of genius. It's coming so naturally to you that you don't even know. Third is to make sure that you're collaborating, and not trying to hog all of the opportunity for yourself because you want to really let other people shine in their area, and then you're going to have to take charge. You're going to have to proactively advocate. You're going to have to position yourself, and you're going to have to be persuasive because people don't necessarily see what you see. And that's why you're the innovator and they're not at that point in time.
Did you get that? People are not going to see what you see because you are the innovator in this particular moment in time. You, my creating maven, it's you because you see it. It's you because it bothers you to no end and drives you nuts. It's you. I loved this conversation with Betsy, and I loved her reframe on passion to help us to identify it by noticing what we hate, noticing what drives us nuts, and what we think is missing. So I want you to ask yourself the questions that Betsy raised. Where do you see stuff as broken? Where in your life are you thinking, somebody needs to do something about that? Where do you notice an unmet or undermet need? That's the clue to your passion, to your corner of the world to create in. And beyond that, know that when you're ready to figure out how to show up in that space and figure out what creative strength to leverage, you're going to want to visit Betsy's page to take her superpowers quiz. I've put the link to the quiz and how you can follow her and learn more about her in the show notes. Betsy also reminded us of the importance of creating and serving in collaboration with others. This theme of collaboration also came up strongly in my conversation with Josephine Garnham in episode 76. So I love that it's coming up again. What we offer and what we have to offer to the world is not just about us and us going at it as lone wolves. There is so much to be gained and given by creating and serving in community. Knowing your superpower through her quiz can help you know not only your lane, but learn more about your partners in this creating journey. I love how this conversation ties nicely with my discussion with Lamar Womble in episode 77, where we did a deep dive on passion. If you haven't listened to it, be sure to go back and check it out, and especially listen for what Lamar shares about the passion, action, momentum, confidence, connection. All this good stuff is building on each other, and I love it. So remember, 1, passion. You can find it and what you need to be doing by noticing what you hate. 2, strengths. Take the Betsy Jordyn Superpowers quiz to find your creative strengths. And 3, remember that your strengths are so much better if you use them in community and collaboration with others. And 4, to be of best service, shift your focus from you and whether others are doing what you're doing or not, and focus on who you are here to serve. And get on with it. I'm so excited for you, my creating maven. And if you happen to discover your passion in this conversation for the first time, I need you to tell me about it. Tell me. Don't keep it to yourself. Hit me up on LinkedIn and tell me all about it. And if you want to hear from me like on a daily basis and have a way to interact with me more, then LinkedIn is the space to do it. Follow me there and let's get into a nice chat. You can see how you can do this in the show notes. See you soon, creating maven. Until then, remember to always ask yourself, what will I create?